Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I'll start with Mr. Gramlich. I'm concerned that the wind energy subsidies that we're spending and the proliferation or the growth of wind energy is actually costing us more than we know. Are you familiar with concerns that the military and that have been raised with respect to interference of wind turbines with radar used for air traffic control and military training and any of the costs associated with that?
Every project does need to review a number of things, including wildlife impacts, local community impacts, but certainly if you're anywhere near a military installation, there's been a lot of work and a lot of interaction with the Department of Defense on how radar and training routes can be preserved intact and consistent with both development and military objectives.
Great. And I'm going to go now to Dr. Michaels. The Public Utility Commission of Texas Chair Donna Nelson has stated that federal incentives for renewable energy have distorted the competitive wholesale market in Texas. Wind has been supported by federal production tax credit that provides $22 per megawatt hour of energy generated by wind resources. With these substantial federal incentives, some wind producers have actually bid negative prices into the market and can still make a process. We've seen a number of days with a negative clearing price in the west zone of ERCOT, which is the Texas energy market, where most of the wind farms are installed. These market distortions are creating a problem in Texas in that because wind is unreliable and it makes it difficult for other generators to recover their cost and discourages investment in new generation. Do you believe that her statement is accurate?
Let's see. Chairman Nelson and I have worked in proceedings before the Public Utility Commission of Texas. We have our differences, but on this one I'm generally in agreement with her. And it's a much deeper problem because it's going to become greater as wind grows as a presence. What happens is that the congestion on the transmission lines, people have to bid for it, limited capacity, and because of the PTC, essentially you can bid a negative price, and after you get the PTC back, you're still making an income greater than zero from that. Why is that a distortion? Very simply, it's at variance with the realities of resource scarcity. It's at variance with what we would see in competitive markets, and there doesn't seem to be anything we can do about it while maintaining the efficiency of the grid. It's going to be a much bigger problem because it's not just in Texas. There are at least 3 other regional transmission operators who are starting to face increasing volumes of this in the same way that Texas is, and nobody really knows how to resolve it.
Thank you. And Mr. Eischer, you indicate in your written testimony that a multi-year extension of the the production tax credit is necessary to avoid a bust in the wind energy industry. As former DOE Chief of Staff, you're certainly familiar with the Energy Information Administration's annual energy outlook, are you not? Could you turn your microphone on, please? You answered in the affirmative.
I don't know this year's specific outlook, but I am generally familiar with the
And you agree that it's one of the definitive resources with respect to energy and economic forecasts?
It's a useful one.
And so the AEO's reference case, which assumes that the PTC will not be reauthorized by December 31st of 2013, projects strong growth for the wind energy development in the United States. In fact, it says the increase in wind power generation from 2011 to 2040 at 134 billion kilowatt hours, or 2.6% per year. It represents the largest absolute increase in renewable energy generation. It also indicates that wind will add more than 42 gigawatts of capacity by 2040, and total wind capacity will exceed hydropower by 2040. How can you characterize that projection with no PTC extension as a bust?
I don't know the details of that projection. Let me just say what I do know is the history of the development of this industry, and that is when the PTC is in place, we see growth in this industry. When we lose it as a result of unreliable federal policy, we see a drop-off.
All right, and let me just follow up to Mr. Wahlberg's question to you. He asked how long you think it needs to be extended. Do you have a time frame?
I've said in my testimony we need to put it in place for a multi-year period with a phase-down. I was very clear that it ought to be a phase-down.
And
then we ought, just if I could finish, and that ought to be linked, and I don't know if you were here to hear my statement, this absolutely needs to be linked to opening up master limited partnerships and real estate investment trusts to renewable energy. Both of those financing mechanisms put in place by this Congress have been available to conventional energy sources, and they ought to be.
And those won't, and those alone won't do it. You've still got to basically give them money.
Be careful. I said a multi-year extension with a phase down, with a smart ramp up of those. I am very clear that we give some years to the PTC, phase it down, and then ramp up these two other financing mechanisms that have been so vital to the development of oil and gas infrastructure to the tune of roughly $500 billion. That's a smart transition, and that's what we ought to be doing. And let me just finish. We have bipartisan support in this House for that bill, and we ought to get on with it.
All right. Well, I'm out of time. Thank you very much for your testimony.